Oh, our White House correspondent Kimberly Halkett is standing by in Washington with more on that. But first, let's speak to Hoda Abdel-Hamid. She's in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. What can you tell us about today's raids, Hoda?
Well, there's a raid that has been ongoing for several hours now. It started around 2:30 local, which is 12:30 GMT in Jenin. Now, Jenin has been really a focus of the Israeli forces here in the occupied West Bank. We do know that there's a lady who has been wounded by shrapnel. We do know there's several other injuries, some of them by live ammunition. But we did speak to people on the ground, and at the moment they say that the Israeli forces are inside the refugee camp. They were near a hospital there, and they could hear an exchange of gunfire. It's still a very fluid situation, and it's ongoing at the moment.
All right, let's thank Hoda Abdel-Hamid for now. I think we're going to come back to you in a moment, Hoda, but let's take this to our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett. She's standing by live for us in Washington. And Kimberly, let's start with this issue of U.S. sanctions. Are they targeting settler groups or individuals? Because as we know, settlement activity under international law, according to UN experts, any transfer of population, that's illegal, they say.
And as a result, the U.S. president has promised to hold those individuals and groups to account. And so what we know is weeks ago, the U.S. president tasked some of his top secretaries to look at policies that they could use, because there was a feeling within the Biden administration that the Israeli government simply was not serious about holding Israeli settlers to account for the violent acts they were committing against Palestinians. And now what we understand is that announcement about that policy is imminent, that the Biden administration is on the cusp of making the announcement that it will be putting in place a travel ban that will, in effect, prevent settlers who have committed violent acts, we understand it will be several dozen, from coming to the United States for their attacks on Palestinians. We should point out there will also be travel restrictions put on some Palestinians who have committed acts against Israelis as well. But this is really significant because not only did the U.S. president telegraph this in an op-ed a few weeks ago, but this is something that has been promised for about 3 years by the Biden administration, but has really not been done by any administration until going back to Bill Clinton. So this is a big action on the part of Joe Biden, and one that he's been facing a lot of pressure to do.
Now, you've got to wonder, Kimberly, how is this going to impact relations with the current Israeli government, which includes figures within the cabinet who are settlers, who are from quite extreme settlements like Kiryat Arba, Ben Gvir, case in point, all of which, when you look at international human rights organizations, say, are illegal under international law once again?
It doesn't appear that the U.S. president seems to be thinking about that right now. What he seems to be thinking about is his own reelection. And here in the United States, in some very key swing states, for example, there are some very prominent Muslim leaders who have put together a group called Abandon Biden. And right now, they are saying that they will not support him as long as he does not take action to stand up and stop the slaughter of Palestinians, not just in Gaza, but also the attacks in the West Bank, such as we've seen by the settlers. So the U.S. president is under pressure by Muslim leaders. He's under pressure in terms of the number of casualties that we're seeing in Gaza, whether it is protests outside the White House, whether it is demonstrations around the world. He's hearing the international outcry, and he's also had even resignations from within his own administration over some of his policies in support of Israel. And so this seems to be what is driving these announcements. It doesn't seem to be the issue of how he's going to deal with the Israeli government moving forward that seems to be at the front of the president's mind.
All right, let's leave it there for now. This has been really important developments that Kimberly's updating us. And let's take this back to Hoda Abdel-Hamid. Any reaction coming from the Israeli authorities, from settler groups to this?
Well, so far, we haven't heard anything. I think everybody is waiting to see and probably wanting to know what are the details of who will be on that list if indeed it comes out. Now, something is to issue a list and forbidding people to travel to the U.S. The other question is, will it actually change anything here on the ground in the occupied West Bank? If you ask Palestinians, they will probably be very skeptic about this. Just look at the numbers, and that's according to the UN. Since October 7th, there have been more than 300 settler attacks on Palestinians. About a dozen have lost their lives. Others have been wounded with live ammunition ever since Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has been distributing weapons to settlers across the occupied West Bank. Now, Palestinians would tell you that they don't think anything will change because the settlers have not only the political protection from the coalition government of Benjamin Netanyahu, but they also have the protection of the Israeli forces on the ground. So many times I've spoken to people really across the occupied West Bank. I was just in Hebron yesterday and this morning, and people were telling me there that they get attacked, they get accused of things that they haven't done, and this is done with total impunity, and they always pay the prices. And sometimes it's the soldiers that are helping the settlers in whatever acts they're doing. And it is really a worrying situation. But this has been going on for decades, and it has increased and increased, regardless of whatever any U.S. administration has said in the past. Certainly, it never had such a bold move as the one it will have, as we understand it today, was by issuing this list. But certainly people here don't expect much change, or at least not immediate change on the ground, because also of the current atmosphere since October the 7th, that the Palestinians are being made to pay the brunt for what the operation Hamas carried out on October the 7th. They suffer from revenge attacks continuously, and there is no one there to protect them.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much, Hoda Abdel-Hamid.